angry or
Are they say, oh,
I hope. Hopefully that solved the audio issues. Please let me know if they have. If they haven't, I'll pause before I get into anything. Thanks for letting me know. Probably some issue with restarting. I had some pretty weird internet issues yesterday, so through all the restarting and fixing. I don't know why, but my headset isn't considered the default, even though I set it to the default. Hopefully, I solved it. So I'm just double checking with chat, make sure I'm audible now. Guess I haven't heard. Why is that the case? I just want to keep talking just to get some confirmation. If not, what would be the issue? Still on here. Okay, I'll try this. No, that can't be right. It should be this one. It should be this. Oh man, I hate that when this happens. All right. Let's make sure it's not an issue here. Problem is, I don't want to like mess with too much stuff. As soon as you hear me, please just let me know. There's a chance that this solves the issue, but I think there are other problems if I do it that way. Yeah, it might. Maybe it's this. No, there's no desktop audio. Should be coming through the mic. What the hell is the issue here? Oh, that's annoying. Oh, I should keep talking. I forget. I gotta keep talking to make sure. All right, let's try this. It can't possibly be right. Yeah, no, I'm getting it pretty clearly not. So it has to be this. No, no, no. It's almost certainly not on your. I guess. All right, I'm gonna play the audio from my from. I'll look for. Okay. Okay. Well, that's a problem. Oh no, we're gonna spend so much time on this audio problem. Why is this not working? Um. Okay, let's try the. No, I already tried that. We can try this. I don't think this will work. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm also going to try. Another thing? What the hell happened? Oh, this is frustrating. Let me tell you, quite frustrating. Shouldn't be. Should be just like this, but I don't know why it's not. I'm like running out of things I even know what to do. Um, yeah, it should be. I'll try resetting my headset. Alright, I tried resetting my headset, but I don't think that's the issue because if you're not hearing my desktop audio either, what the hell is going on? Um, I can't imagine what the hell could be happening. Uh, yeah, there's really nothing I really know what to do for this. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna try restarting OBS. I'll try that. Oh, now my camera's not working? What the hell is going on? So now my camera's not working at all. I assume that I'm still not audible. I guess this is just tech problems day. That's frustrating. That is extremely frustrating, let me tell you. Okay, check it on my own. Yeah, absolutely no audio. And now my camera's broken. Oh no, hold on. I'm looking at it on my phone and I can hear and see myself. Is that the same for everyone else? I can't see it on OBS for some reason. Maybe it's accidentally like moved to the front to the back or something. Move to top. Where the hell is this? Uh, please let me know if you can hear me now because on my phone I was able to hear myself and I had full video. Yeah, now. Oh, wait, hold on. I think I found the problem with this. No, what the hell happened here? OBS, you're driving me insane. Alright, I just want to see if I. Alright, okay. On my phone, I'm able to. But now my camera is gone. I don't know why my camera is gone from OBS only. Apparently, I am in fact where it's supposed to be. No sound. God, I hate when this stuff happens. Yeah, I have no idea where my camera went on OBS. I guess this is a problem that we might need to save for the future because it is allegedly display. Oh, no, no. My transition. Okay. All right, we're going to kill the stream. We're going to come back. Okay. Back now. Can I hear myself? Yeah, I can hear myself on there. All right. All right, all right, I'll check with chat. Okay. I believe the technical problems have been solved. I think. I hope. I hope. Let's go back to the video. Oh, this broke as well. No, we need this one. Yep, there we go. All right. Hopefully the audio from the video uh, should be audible as well. I'm gonna kill my mic just so I can hear for myself.
First, Aron, the floor is all yours.
I'm sorry, what are we doing now?
Closing statements, and then we'll have Q&A.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah, I'm not sure what the audio issues are here. It's working just fine on my phone. I don't know where else, but I hope anyone else watching doesn't have the same issue. But like I'm looking at the screen at my stream on my phone, and it's not an issue. I suppose I can try watching it on my computer, but I don't want looping audio or anything like that. So, I mean, like I said, maybe refreshing would help if you've already refreshed. Oh, I mean, I guess I'm talking, so that doesn't really help. Yeah, I don't know. All right, I'm just gonna proceed because I don't know what the issue is, and I don't really have a way of solving this problem. I'm sorry. But as we left off yesterday, they were getting to their closing speeches, their closings, and we were gonna do like Q&A a little bit. As I said previously, I don't know if it was audible or not, or if it's just for one person or whatever. But I do have I do have some plans. So we got about an hour before we got to pop off. But we'll hear what they have to say, and I'm sure an hour for us will be 20 minutes for them.
The point of the Bible, or the point of the discussion here, can you read the Bible and come away with the impression that it advocates slavery? Since God gives...
It's a good way, like, bringing it back to what we want to talk about, and his specific framing of these things. I think his framing could have been better, but still, yeah, like that's what you want to do in a closing, like bring it back to what you want this to be about.
Express permission and guidelines on how you may own slaves and how you can buy them from the neighbors and how you can even keep children as slaves and they are to be your property forever and all of these things and never ever once does it ever contradict that, not even on moral grounds, like it should, like it would if it wasn't pro-slavery. If it wasn't pro-slavery, it would be either neutral about it or it would condemn it. There would at least be a contradiction in there somewhere.
Right. But there would be at least, and remember, this is the kind of thing we were looking for. There should be, at a minimum, for a Christian at least, there should be a repudiation in the New Testament. I find that to be insufficient, but there's not. It doesn't even clear that bar. Now, if we haven't gone back to it, maybe we will in the closing. I mean, Converse Contender did set up the avenue for dishonesty where he says, well, I laid out all of these examples at the end. Well, he laid them out so quickly, if you recall, that we couldn't even read them. They were so briefly on screen, and he just rattled off like 20, 30 quotes or something like that within a minute without any analysis, just like put them on there, assumed that they said what he wanted them to say, and spent the rest of his opening talking about anything else for some reason. So we'll see if he comes back to it, but I agree that at this point it is reasonable to say, there has been demonstrated no contradiction. Obviously, we want to find out what's true and not just like what has been argued for, but Converse Contender didn't give us the opportunity to argue about whether the New Testament repudiates slavery, right? He didn't argue for it. He didn't bring back these quotes. He didn't want to talk about them. He didn't analyze them in any way. And the way he presented them was not in the form of an argument, but in the form of a shotgun blast. So it's reasonable to ignore it, but I'm very concerned, as I said yesterday, that he's going to come back in his closing and say, I actually did show you where the Bible contradicts its previous allowance of slavery, but you ignore it like I said you would. That's what I'm worried will happen.
Not always, only, ever. Yes, you can have slaves. Yes, you can keep slaves. Yes, be like slaves unto Christ. Whatever. That's the message throughout, consistent, never changes.
And as I recall, like, Converse Contender didn't really argue against it so much as to say, like, no, like, it was just allowing for it isn't the same as being in favor of it. I'm sorry, with something like slavery, it is. If you allow for it, you're not opposed to it, and that's bad enough. James apparently is, like, accidentally muted, and I wonder if he'll notice that he's muted and not talking to anybody.
What I said, folks. Sorry.
There it is. Yeah. All right. He figured it out.
We're gonna go into a 5-minute
You got
closing
there.
from Converse, followed by 35 minutes of Q&A. Converse, the floor is all yours.
Thanks. Look, I don't know everything, okay, but I've been reading a lot about the topic. I happen to think that Dr. Josh's book is, quite a good
Point again
introduction.
towards I didn't make an argument, and I can't make an argument here, but this book definitely does. So you should just believe that I'm correct about this. It's an allusion to a real argument or an actual argument. It's pretty gross to do that.
To the topic, all this, at least most of the scholars I cited tonight are references from his book. But I know that we obviously disagree on some stuff as well. We
Sure,
agree on
but
some
why didn't
things,
you
we
make your
disagree on others. When I
disagreement
started
known?
looking at the scholarship, I was surprised about how much disagreement there is. If you look at Bernard Levinson's book, or paper, you'll see that there's just immense.
If you ever see anyone doing
disagreement
this, you
between
can
Milgram,
mostly disregard what they're saying. They should be able to make the argument, and if they can't even attempt to make the argument, like there are reasonable ways where you can reference these books. You can say, like, okay, obviously the subject matter we're talking about is too complex for me to give you all of the information. I can give you the findings or whatever and the argument, a brief version of the argument. But if you want the full thing, but he's not even doing that. He's just saying the arguments against exist and they're in these books and you should read them, but not actually presenting what any of the arguments really are.
Levinson, Van Cedars, and
just name dropping.
Yasher, and many others. So, but the point is, like, look, a lot of the things that he said, that like quoting Christ or quoting different people, like, weren't even quotes from them. So I mean, like, it's there's definitely a bunch of issues in this debate.
Remember, he's like, to take issue that they're not quoting Christ is kind of weird, considering the Old Testament doesn't involve him whatsoever. It's not about him. It's kind of weird for him to like make that statement. Additionally, he was citing things like Galatians and Ephesians, which are not quotes from Christ either. Very strange, but we never actually got into any clash between the claimed support or non-support, because Converse just didn't try to. Like, we're mostly getting it here, like the complaint here, but not really like a repudiation prior.
I think that sometimes this is looked at as more of like a sporting event than it is an actual like
Sure,
trading back and forth
but
of
you're not
ideas to see
you're not
who's actually right. And
changing
that's
that.
one of the problems I think with this debate bro culture.
So now he's complaining about debate bro culture, not relevant whatsoever to the discussion here. Yeah, there's often a lot of like it's kind of sporting match. I've likened debate to being kind of like sparring, like martial arts kind of thing, like verbal martial arts. Um, which like yeah, there can be an entertaining element to that, but you also didn't make efforts to actually make arguments, right? You're complaining, but you didn't attempt to make the clash. You're putting on a show as much as anyone else. It's just your show is less in the avenue of actual debate, but it's still a show.
I do want to say that, as Paul put it, love is the fulfillment of the law. Love does no wrong to the neighbor.
Now he's
Christ
just preaching.
let us know that, like, look, you had Moses giving certain laws because of the hardness of the heart, like divorce, which is actually tied to slavery in the sense that the
Oh,
wife was part of the household.
okay. So now we have the first instance of an actual attempt to say that his quotes have anything to do with slavery in his conclusion, where he says, if you remember, he had a previous quote about like divorce was allowed, but that's because of the hardness of your hearts, which was a bullshit argument to begin with. But um, but now he's saying, oh, it's kind of similar to slavery because women were basically slaves. So like clearly on board with like slavery happening then, right? Because marriage is cool, but you want to extrapolate that to like, well, it's or no, sorry, he's not saying that women were like slaves, even though kind of they were. Sorry, he was saying that it's concerning the household, and therefore it wouldn't be like it's such a reach. Want to remind you again that I was pointing out from the outset, like take a look to see if these quotes have literally anything to do with slavery, and it doesn't.
And but you do have these huge distinctions. For example, Aron used Israelite and Hebrew interchangeably, but there are papers that argue that they're not
Yeah,
the
but
same.
that's not relevant here.
So you can read some of those.
The point of that argument, of course, is not that it's relevant. The point is Aron doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the only argument he's trying to make. It's so funny he's complaining about debate bro culture when he's like, I'm going to be more dishonest than even the worst debate bro.
A lot of scholars don't think this is the case, but some do, because there's a tight connection between the Ivri and the Apiri. And so, there's a lot to be said there. And then
I'm not going to say
I'll
it, but there's a lot to be said.
Saying, like, look, Paul in Philippians chapter 2, I'm just going off memory here, says something like, Christ, although he existed in the very form of God, did not see the equality he had with God something to be held onto.
So remember, he was complaining about quotes being not from Christ, but now he's quoting Paul, and it's not about slavery.
He emptied himself, taking on the form of a servant to serve us, even to the point of a death on the cross. And count yourself as nothing, put others before yourself to reenact him. And then as
literally
was
nothing
pointed
to do
out
with
by
slavery.
Tom Holland, not the actor but the classicist, Christ died a slave's death. He said the last will be first,
no,
the
he
first
died
will be
a
last.
criminal's death. Doggy. But no, he died a criminal's death, not a slave's death. Slaves probably weren't crucified. There's not really a reason to do that. But criminals were. It's just not true.
Done to the least of these, you've also done to me. So I mean, it's just a hard.
So that line, I actually like that parable a pretty significant amount. It's the parable of the sheep and the goats. He's talking about, so have you done the least among you? It's a parable about like Judgment Day and saying that the God will separate the righteous and the unrighteous like a shepherd. I'm paraphrasing. Like a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats, and he will go to the goats and he will say, I cast you into hell I cast you down away from me because when I was hungry you did not feed me, when I was cold you did not shelter me, so on and so forth. And the goats will say, but we never knew you. How can you say that we did this? And the response is that, so as you have done to the least among you, so too have you done unto me. And then the same happens with the sheep, where he says, you will be exalted because when I was hungry you fed me, so on and so forth. And they said, well, we didn't know you. What do you mean that we did this for you? And so as you've done to the least among you, you've done this unto me. This is sometimes used as a justification for good works being a source of or a route to salvation, but that is not consistent between Christian denominations, as I understand. Some find it heretical, some find it imperative. Really depends on who you ask. But clearly, it's about treatment of your fellows, not about slavery. If someone was in favor of slavery, they could say, oh yeah, I treated my slaves well, therefore I have done well by the least among me. And it is treating them poorly that would be the wrong thing. But you'd have to assume that slavery is wrong. I would agree with you. In order to read that passage and say that it's against slavery. So it's not a justification. It is not a repudiation of slavery when he says, so have you done to the least among you, so too have you done unto me. It is only saying to treat others well, not saying that slavery is a method of treating them poorly. So I want to be clear. He keeps saying this, and like I didn't mention it before because it was like in passing, but it has been bothering me because I know what he's talking about, and it doesn't mean what he's saying it means. Just like most of the other quotes that people will trot out for this, just have nothing to do with slavery.
Thing to tell Christians that when they read their Bible and they see all this stuff, that they're just insane, and that these 5 verses that you have.
It's not 5 verses. You laid out a lot.
The other lessons taught in the Bible.
And by the way, like this is another like kind of dishonest thing of like playing down the amount of evidence from the other side and playing up how much you have. He'll generally reference books, but not give you actual reasonings for like actual justifications, any actual repudiation of slavery. He'll claim that these things that don't talk about it are, but obviously they're not. And then he'll play down. He'll say, "Oh, you just have these 5 quotes." What it's been, Aron laid out significantly more than 5, and Converse, you laid out actually laid out 0, like not 1. You paraded a bunch of quotes on screen, but you didn't demonstrate anything to do with slavery among them. You talked about irrelevant stories that have nothing to do with slavery. You talked about divorce, which has nothing to do with slavery. But not a single thing you've said has been actual evidence that anywhere in the Bible is slavery rebuked.
But yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that closing.
But also, it's a very cute
Converse. Dog. We are going to jump into
I would like everyone
the
to appreciate the dog, please.
And we want to say welcome to Aron's friend. What is your dog's name?
He is Bowie.
Hello,
Super
Bowie.
Cute.
You're very cute.
That face.
He's a
So
Dachshund
furry.
Corgi mix, and they call this
I
breed
thought
a
it was-
Dorgie.
I thought it was. It looked like a corgi. Yeah, he's adorable.
Before we jump into the Q&A, a couple of quick housekeeping things. In particular, as you can see,
And we'll
at the
do a little
bottom
bit of
right your
Q&A just to
screen,
finish it up.
Modern Day Debate has a
Oh,
podcast. Folks,
I
if
guess
you have not.
I guess I'll say it here. I'm okay with like doing some Q&A here just to like round out the time because as I say I've got stuff going on. But I do intend to do some more interesting stuff tomorrow. I came across some discussion about a book and it's not that long. We're gonna read it. It's also a graphic novel, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe it's an illustrated book. I don't know what exactly it's called. But we'll go over it tomorrow and we'll explain more in detail towards the end. But we're not going to get into it now because it's going to take too long, and I just don't have that much time. Just like, whet your appetite for tomorrow. And as I say, when we get towards the end, I'll give you more information about that. So we'll watch the Q&A for like a half hour or so, and then we'll wrap up.
Check out the Modern Day Debate podcast. Pull out your phone.
I like how his
pull
phone
up
is
your
like
favorite
blending
podcast
into the
app on your phone.
to the
Find
background
Modern Day
screen he has
Debate,
behind him.
As it is ad-free, you can listen to debates on the go. We want debates to be available as much as possible, and so do check that out. We also take out the music. If you don't like the music at the start here on YouTube, well, hey, no music on the podcast. Check it out. With that, we're going to.
I do, by the way, like
Q&A.
the
Thank you
song
very
they
much
play
for
at the
your
start. I
questions.
always skip
Do
through it in
appreciate
here, but
this
it's a pretty
first
cool
one
song.
coming in
I
from
suggest you check it
Vonzu.
out
Appreciate it. Says,
on their channel.
May I debate on here sometime? Absolutely, Vaughn. And I saw an email came in from you. I'll get back to you. Also said,
I don't know who that person is, but if you could just like email them to be like, hey, like let's go, maybe I can do that. The people who are on here, I imagine, have like more substantial followings than I do, but I don't know, maybe throw my hat in the ring. Actually, kind of reminds me. Someone in my comments was saying like, "Oh, if you're so confident that Sanvi is wrong, you should debate her." I would expect that people wouldn't want to bother with a channel my size. I mean, I never heard back from Dr. Wilson. I assume for that reason. Could be for a million things, but still. I mean, if she'd be willing to talk to me, very happy to talk. We can debate or chat or have a conversation. However, whatever framing seems most appropriate. But be very open to talking to people about this stuff.
Aron and Raw, thank you for helping in my deconstruction.
In fact, I want to do so. It's not just like, oh, I'd be happy to. I'll like put up with it. No, I actively want to. But for now, we're still developing some peeps, trying to get a good chat going. I do see people in here pretty regularly, and I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And one thing that can help, if you do want to see me in conversation with people, is help the channel, like, comment, subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Much appreciated. Thank you.
I don't know if that's slang or if he meant deconversion, but in either case, sounds like he's thanking you, Aron. Yeah, this one coming in from Magellan says, "My ears are bleeding." Thank you for that. Very informative.
Sure, yeah.
Steve says, "Nice sermon, Converse, but please address the topic." Thank you. Converse, any thoughts?
It's pretty snarky, but like, yeah, Converse really didn't address the topic for the most part. Like, every now and again, he'd almost talk about slavery and then go right back to but these books and like there's more argument and that's not really what that and like
not address the topic.
No, not really.
Yeah, I mean, he's just being lame. I don't really care about that.
You got it. All right. This one from Magellan as well says, "Converse, I cannot actually discern individual words." Let's see.
One thing that's rough is because these are in the form of super chats. Sometimes James will have someone like parse through them to give him to like find the good questions to ask, and he won't just have to parse through on the fly. But sometimes he'll just have to be like, "Oh, that's just an unnecessary insult." And he does do a pretty good job of trying not to just lay out blatant insults at his guests that come through his super chats. If it's something like related to the topic, like we just heard of, like, "Hey, do you want to actually address the topic?" All right, sure, right, because it has to do with the conversation at hand. But if it's just like it's just an insult, like, "Oh, you look like whatever" or something like that, what's the point? So that's why you'll see these pauses like that.
Melody Case,
where he'll like start to read it and then just be like, "Whoop, see what that is. Never mind, moving on." Not to mention that, like, well, his community doesn't have a lot of it, but like, some amount of the time you have to just be like, let's not like put hate speech. Let's not read out the hate speech. As I say, the modern day debate community doesn't have that problem specifically, but every so often they'll bring someone like Daniel Hakikachu or like some random Nazi or something on, and well, yeah, their fans will show up and do some hate speech.
It says, "Are you saying people are adopted and not slaves in the Bible, Converse? So Ruth was not raped and owned? She was an adopted family member?"
Yeah, that's right. If you look at Ruth, she's specific.
I don't know enough about that story, but that sounds very incorrect to me. That sounds a lot like Cope, just like, no, there can't be slavery, therefore this is something else. It's also known as motivated reasoning.
He goes to uncover the feet of Boaz, meaning to sleep with him, and he says, "No, wait, look, I'd gladly do this, but there's somebody close."
Someone who knows better. Like, I saw Flint in chat yesterday. I don't see him here today, but like, someone should hit me up. Is that what that means? Like, if you know more about biblical code, I guess, to uncover his feet, that's like, they did the do. Is that what that? I never heard that. I know, like, to lie with him or to know him was like kind of code for that, but I didn't know like to uncover his feet was that too.
It's just me and the family. I'll go to town tomorrow and like I'll see if he will marry you.
I'm happy to take his word
take
for
over
it.
the house.
What's the difference?
If he won't, then I'll do it. Okay. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, okay," and he does it. Okay. So he comes back whenever the other guy's like, "I'm not doing that. No, I'll put my inheritance at jeopardy." So yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. And as far as adoption goes, yes, you can read Mark Glanville's work. And you can read...
At best, this demonstrates that this person wasn't actually a slave this time. This one, yeah. But that's one person. I was going to say a guy, but it's Ruth, and this one woman. At best, that's the argument you can make, and it seems like it's tenuous at best, just from what he said about it, and I don't really trust his framing. But it doesn't have anything to do with the actual, like, overarching question of whether the Bible is pro-slavery. Just because one person specifically wasn't a slave, sure, that doesn't mean anything, right? Like, well, I was gonna say Moses wasn't a slave, but I guess that's not a good example. Like, Abraham wasn't a slave. That doesn't mean it was anti-slavery. It just means this person wasn't. Um, it has nothing to do with the topic. That's part of the problem with Q&As. People are even worse in Q&A than they are in debates about understanding what's on topic and how to make good arguments. It might feel important to them. They might have a specific, like, it bothers them that, he's claiming the story of Ruth didn't involve her being enslaved. Maybe there's a particular issue for that person, and it feels important to them. I'm not saying they shouldn't ask about it, right? This is a thing that matters to them. I'm just saying, like, for the purposes of argumentation, it's not super relevant, which is why we skip Q&A most of the time.
As well.
But now we're just having fun. We're hanging out, right?
There's a few things in Milgram that talks about this as well. Muffs takes the position, for example.
You got it. This one coming in from, do appreciate it, 9 Deal 9. I didn't see a question attached, but put it in the chat as a normal question, and I can ask that if you'd like. Bitter Truth says, Aron, I'm your fan. Since I watched your debate, you defeated Nadir Ahmed. What brings you out of religion myths? I think they're saying, what's brought you out of religion most of all? Maybe what's the primary factor, let's say?
No, for me, you don't have to. It's not that I believe something and you have to prove it wrong. It's that if I think that this is true or closest to the truth, what have you, and I want to improve my understanding of it, and then in that investigation I discover that what I was told was true was in fact not true, and that there is actually no truth to it, I've already stopped believing it. If you can't show that there's any truth to it, we're done. If it requires faith, we're done.
You got it. This one coming in from Duchess of Clutches. TTV says, does the Bible contain the same prescriptions about adultery as it does for slavery? Can you commit adultery if you treat your mistress nicely, Converse?
Yeah, so, like, this is kind of hinting at what I was talking about yesterday. The Bible is very capable of condemning things. It's not like it's not able to do that, and clearly it seemed very important to be like, yeah, adultery is a problem, and theft, or like bearing false witness, this was more important, right? This makes the top 10, it doesn't, by the way. This is kind of anachronistic, but I'm not going to get into that too much. Like, you shall not covet, but you can do slavery, and remember his explanation for this was like, well, they had hardened hearts and they were too barbaric to not do it, but they weren't too barbaric to not covet. I don't know if that's even possible for humans to do. Like, at all, irrespective of society, not want things, to never lie, well, I guess false witness is a little different, like to never commit adultery. This is easier than not doing slavery. I don't know about all that. It's kind of what's hinted at, or like to never disrespect your parents. That's that. Remember, punishable by death. This is more important than slavery. That's kind of what we're hinting at here with this question.
Oh, you might. Let me check.
Well, Christ. No, I'm good. So Christ said when he was talking about divorce, he said that you can't divorce. Moses gave that law.
Well, it has nothing to do with divorce. We're talking about adultery. And the reason why they're saying if you're nice to your mistress or whatever, because there are laws about how you should treat your slaves that Aron has gone over. Of like, well, if you're like, you can't be that mean to them, so it's okay. Like, as is often a justification, but no, clearly, right? Like, the Bible isn't like, well, if you have a mistress, you have to be nice to her. No, it's able to clearly and thoroughly condemn what it thinks is wrong, and it didn't do that with slavery.
Adultery. So he did make that explicit, that rule, to be separated.
This one coming in from
nothing to do with the divorce thing.
Lethanital HVAC says, Aron, was slavery always wrong? If so, why didn't any secular intellectuals ever criticize its existence? But it was Christians who have led the abolitionist movements, recently William Wilberforce.
So there are so many things in that question that make no sense. So when people ask if was slavery always wrong, they try to imply that like, oh, it was a thing of the time, therefore it wasn't that bad. This is like a PragerU style argument. They have taken that position before, which is of course nonsense, right? We wouldn't say that like if you believe, for example, that in divine command theory, like a lot of people do, then before the Ten Commandments was murder wrong? Oh, it still was because it has nothing to do with when you learned that it was wrong. Okay, like obviously, right? Why should the story of Cain and Abel? Why should that murder be an issue at all if the law hadn't been given? Well, for one, obviously it's wrong, irrespective of that law being given. But two, once we understand that murder is wrong, we can look backwards and see those instances and go, yeah, that was wrong, irrespective of what they thought at the time. Same thing with slavery. But further, he was saying like, why didn't secular intellectuals speak out about it? First of all, do you know they didn't? I would be surprised if secular intellectuals didn't speak out about it. But more importantly, there haven't always been secular intellectuals because, as it turns out, being not a Christian or not a Muslim or whatever was often a pretty serious thing that could get you into a lot of hot water. Ask people what the crimes or what apostasy gets you in a lot of these religious laws. In fact, I know in the Old Testament specifically, it says like if someone comes to you, whether he's your brother or your husband or your whatever, and says come, let us worship other gods, you should go in with not just go with a sword and not just kill him, but like the whole town he comes from, and like leave no two stones on top of each other, like really like kill everyone they know, kind of thing. So there haven't been a lot of secular intellectuals that have been open about their non-belief. That said, that some Christians happened to be on the right side for once, and being opposed to slavery, ignores one, that the justification for it was biblical in nature, and that Christians were the proponents of slavers, but also is like pretty dishonest, right? Like Christians will constantly, like any religious person, will constantly run away from any wrong thing that has been done on account of their religion. They'll always be like, well, just because some believers do a thing doesn't mean that's real Christianity or whatever the thing is. But of course, like when they do a thing they like, it's like, oh, that's a Christian thing, you know. There's just a lot of problems with these questions, and I don't know if he'll have the time to really deconstruct it in this way.
Okay, so why have all secularists criticized?
Oh, and by the way, secular thinkers now tend to be pretty opposed to slavery, and the people who are in favor of it tend not to be secular.
Slavery.
I think they're saying, so why didn't any secular?
They're pretending that no secular intellectual ever condemned slavery, when that's just false. Of course they did. A number of Christians did too, but that doesn't mean that this is an atheist versus Christian thing. You also have to remember that, for a long time there was under the rule of, kill the infidel, the unbeliever.
Oh, okay. He is going to hit up all the things I was saying. Cool.
And you don't have to go, somebody who understands natural selection will certainly understand that you don't have to go through too many generations of that before all you have left are blind believers. Right? So it's hard to have a community where you can express free thought when they're going to kill you over it.
Yeah, and if you are a non-believer or prefer to be more secular, you might not make that known. You might still pretend to be a believer, like a lot of our politicians do, by the way. Do you think politicians actually give a shit about religion? But they're always showing up in church, like making appearances in church so that press can take their picture there, and it's weird if they don't. Like Donald Trump, like walking across the street in front of a church to hold a Bible upside down. Do you think he gives a single shit about religion? He might call himself, like, he might think he's a Christian or whatever. I'm not saying he's an atheist. I'm saying, like, he doesn't care, but he's performing it like a lot of people perform it. The more pressure there is to do so.
So there's that to consider as well.
You got it. And thanks very much for your super chat question, or I should say announcement. James W. says, after show at A.B. Newman's channel. That's linked in the description, folks. If anybody wants to do an after show for our debates, we are always willing to give them a plug and put them in the description box, folks. So if you ever think about doing after shows, we're willing to do it for you too, whether you're Christian, atheist, Muslim.
More likely to do that if I can, like, get myself
why
on there.
didn't? And they said, Aron, we would be honored if you would stop by And there's going to be an open mic. Folks, you should come and celebrate why you think Aron was more persuasive, or tell us why you didn't think he was more persuasive. Thank you to all of you. Thanks for that, James W. That's linked in the description box.
Yeah, I got a comment on that, James. So I'm wondering why it wouldn't be honor if I stopped by.
I mean, you can ask them, but I have some thoughts as to possibly why.
Richard Dawkins said he is done debating Christians because they are so impossible to reason with. How close are you to this point?
Yeah, I feel that
very nearly.
Yeah.
I only do this for the spectators.
And notice like Converse didn't like engage in much reason, but yeah, like I agree with Aron. You're not there to talk to Converse Contender. You're there to talk to the audience, and you never know what'll convince somebody. I was a believer for a while, but the thing that convinced me away had nothing to do with argumentation, but such as it is, you never really know. And it's not really. It sounds bad because it sounds like I'm trying to like corrupt the people or whatever. But the point is like, it's important to like, if you believe something is true, it's important to present that information, and different avenues of doing so can yield additional results as opposed to doing it in just the one way, right? You can give lecture after lecture at a college or whatever, but if people never go to take those courses, or if they fall asleep in class, they're not going to hear it. But they might hear, two people shouting on each other on the internet over it. It's just about effective, diversity of tactics, as it were.
I frequently get, and I want to say that I average about one a day, messages from former believers thanking me for something I did that helped them walk their way out of the delusions of religious faith and into rationality. So I mean that keeps me going. That keeps me doing this work. It's a little bit at a time, but it's something.
Juicy. This one from Bite Me XD. This one's gonna be good. Okay, they say Aron won the debate as usual. Who was Converse?
I never get why people like just pop in to announce a winner. It's so strange to me. Like, I don't know. Like, who asked? This also isn't like a refereed event. You're not the judge or whatever. It's so weird to just be like, they won. Like, okay, sure. I'm glad you think that. More accurately, they're announcing they think that this person was correct, but like that doesn't mean anything. Like, yeah, it's very, very strange to me. And in fact, if you're engaging in a good faith debate, which I'm not going to weigh in on whether that happened here. Honestly, like there shouldn't be a winner so much as like which point was proven. By the end, maybe both people are on the same side because one has been swayed, or maybe by the end you're just like, okay, I at least understand the position better, or where you're coming from, and let people at the very least have been gotten the like educational value out of listening to the the arguments confront each other. I had a friend who taught a debate class for a while in a college. He invited me to like do a debate for his class just so they could see what it looks like. And one of the things he told me about it afterwards was like, yeah, people don't really like I don't ask about who won, and I encourage them not to really look at it in that way, because it's not really helpful if you're trying to actually argue in good faith and actually make good arguments. It's not about winning, which is, I think, correct. Sadly, that's not what debate ends up being, right? That's more of the ideal concept of what debate should be. Oftentimes it is just a slug match, and then like a boxing match, you announce a winner at the end because that's what we're here for. It's just weird to me for the audience to pop in to do it, for someone to climb into the ring, grab the mic, and be like, this guy won, I'm out. It's just so weird.
Thank you very much. As they say, James, thanks for changing the intro song.
Oh, he changed the intro song. I didn't hear that anymore.
Words. And now you know who Converse is. He's linked in the description if you want to hear more from him, as well as Aron. Aron, did you have anything to add?
I just want the one thing that Converse said that I agree with, that when you do these live debates, it is performance art. It's not about
Yeah,
communication
very often.
of
But that
ideas.
it can have value,
I would
right?
much
Just like
rather
performance
that,
art can
and
have
the only
value.
way to do those type debates is to have it in writing. Where you don't have a live audience. You put a live audience in it, then it's a performance.
100%. Yeah, and you know what? Ozzy Manzius, you might know him from way back, G Plus days. I actually talked to him about that not too long ago. He's like one of the most popular atheists online, and he says, look, back before we had these hangouts like this, we had just writing. We just had keyboard chats, and so you couldn't get by with rhetoric that you can get by on here. You have to type it all out. So I can check it line by line and respond. And the same thing was said by Dr. Michael Heiser, where he said, debating is a waste of time. Just give me a paper to read.
So I don't quite agree with that.
I'm right there.
Juicy.
So just because it is not necessarily the best avenue for which you can derive truth, which by the way, it can be, there's just about the kind of debates that you have. You might not have a public debate, or it might be done in good faith, less structured, more conversational. There's a lot of ways you can actually use debate as a tool for arriving at truth, particularly philosophical truths. But even if it's not the case, even if it's not that great of a method, even if he might prefer a paper or whatever else, that doesn't make it a waste of time. There are other things that are valuable there. It's just that deriving truth might not be what that thing is. And that's okay. Not everything needs to be an attempt to derive truth. Just as they say it's like kind of performance art. Well, art isn't a waste of time. Neither is performance art, even though they're not like necessarily trying to derive some truth by doing it. They're trying to do any number of things, but like engage in artistic expression, or capture some aspect of the human experience, or any number of things, or just display technical ability. Well, the same is true in debate. The real value is in the ability to spread ideas in a way where the worst ideas should be the least able to survive the process. That's not always the case, but when you have a debate like this, we're seeing two positions reach broader audiences, and if you're honest about what was said, you come away realizing that Aron's position is probably the right one. I tend to agree that like he argued better, he made his case better, and since I agree with that, with his position, you're also getting more people to know about it, and like to know that position, and to understand why the other position doesn't hold up. And I think that's positive. I think that's demonstrably not a waste of time.
I'm intrigued by, because I know Heiser is quite the intellectual. I do have to ask if Heiser, given that I'm at least partisan in favor of debates, if Heiser has read the empirical literature on randomized controlled trials on whether or not video debates, are persuasive.
I haven't heard about this.
I can tell you I have. So.
Oh, good. Yeah. Look, James, I'm not saying that debates are useless. Right?
I mean, you did
That's
say that.
Heiser's view. My view is that debates could be more productive if they weren't such fandom. Like.
Sure, but like you contributed negatively towards the productivity of this debate, right? Like, no, like only one super chat said anything about it, but like you were the negative aspect towards proving a point here. Aron had some instances where his appeal was less to the facts and more towards like the emotional impact. That's part of debate, and I don't love it, but sure. You, however, went out of your way not to make your arguments. So, like, I don't think you get to complain about the format of debate and like the non-productivity based on the culture.
Fandom-esque.
Yeah. Sometimes there's too much rhetoric and tribalism. I can agree with that. Eddie Dean, thanks so much.
There's an aspect of how you do these live debates. Both of us show up. We don't know what the other one has said. We're going to have to address everything that the other one said without having heard it. That's a problem already.
Now, that's only partially true. I agree with that. I agree that that is an issue, that oftentimes you're not going to have access to what you would need to know. Like, Converse Contender, if he had actually spent time on any of those quotes he laid at the end of his opening, if maybe he has some quote or other, and maybe Aron would need to do some research to understand why that's not saying what he's saying it says, right? And to be able to address it on the fly is kind of difficult. This is why sometimes I've been inclined to like maybe opening statements should be prepared ahead of time and exchanged in advance. But even barring that, you can kind of know a little bit of what they're going to say. There's only so much a person can say from Converse's position, and only so many things that someone can say from Aron's position, to be honest, right? Like there are only so many arguments that could exist on that. But additionally, like you can go find these people, especially with online debates. If I do like, it'd be cool, I think, to talk to Sanvi Reasoning about this stuff, as what one commenter suggested. But if I did, I would have already heard of the things she says. I already know the kinds of arguments that she makes, and I should expect. The remaining ones, maybe I need to, maybe I'll need to deal with on the fly. But for the most part, I expect I would know going into it what's going on. This is a concept called blocking, by the way, in debate. I don't know if I've talked about this in my concepts document yet. A document, in fact, that I have not really dealt with too much recently. Okay, I've talked about it, but not filled it in. I still have all this homework to do. But blocking is something that debaters do, where you will have, there's only so many arguments a person can make. So in advance, you go, okay, for this argument, this is generally the tact of approach. This is what I want to say about it, and this often can just exist in your head. It was advised that people write it out and just like take the Post-it and put it onto their debate sheet, like their notes, and just read it off verbatim. I don't like that. I think that's much less useful. But the idea still works, that like there's only so many things a person could say on this topic that's at all relevant to what we're saying, to what we're discussing. So like, you can like be moderately prepared for this.
Then I've noticed when we do, especially like dealing with creationists and such, they'll pull out some scientific paper that I've never heard of.
Yeah, that's a real difficulty. That's where like it's really an issue, and it's because of like the dishonest debaters, right? Like the bad faith debaters, like creationists often are, where they'll pull out some paper. It probably doesn't say what they say it says. Even if it does, it's probably from some crank who didn't get it like peer reviewed or whatever. Like it's kind of like the Andrew Wakefield's paper. There's a lot of that, and that's really difficult. You can't really address that on the fly. But then that's also why like certain topics are more or less amenable to debate formats like this. You wouldn't have, for something like that, it would be more difficult. But for something like slavery in the Bible, well, there's only so much that can really be said about it, and you can discuss the specific injunctions or whatever. That didn't happen, but that didn't happen because Converse Contender refused to engage with the argument. So like, yeah, there are issues, but that's not. I don't think that's like a condemnation. I don't think that justifies a condemnation of debate as a valuable tool for public engagement.
Supposedly says something, and in written debates, I'll have the opportunity to read that paper that they cited before I make my reply, which you can't do when you're doing it live on stage.
Correct.
But in a written debate, I can. And invariably, I have always seen that the paper they cited that does not actually say what they said it did. But there's no way you'd know that.
Literally the thing I said. So yeah, written debates are also very good. But there are trade-offs, because people don't read written debates nearly as much as they watch live ones or recorded ones or whatever. We are watching this. I have never in my life, not once, even as a competitive debater, never read a written debate. This just doesn't have the reach. And it ends up being a lot more dry and, whatever else. There are versions of that I haven't encountered. In fact, Aron Robb once had a long-form back-and-forth video debate with Kent Hovind. But then you run into a different issue that happens. He ran into an issue there that could happen with the written debates, which is someone could just write an inordinate amount. Kent responded to Aron's like first 45-minute video, or however long it was, with 8 hours of video. You couldn't possibly, nobody's going to sit through that. And even when I was watching it, I was just like, I'm skipping all of Kent's part, because I'm not going to watch for 8 hours. It's ridiculous. And then just watch Aron's recap of it. And you can argue there that there's a problem of I'm not listening to the other side or whatever. Maybe, but everything has trade-offs. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, debate has value and it has pros and cons, and you just have to understand what those are. But that it has negatives doesn't mean it is without value, and people tend to. It's weird how often people ignore the positives, like what James was pointing out, but I don't know very much. I've never heard of that paper until he mentioned it, so I don't want to comment on it.
Live debate, which is just one of the many failures of doing live debates.
Yeah, there are
Chiefs, to
failures
say
for
the
sure.
least. Eddie
Yeah, it's
Dean
not
says,
perfect.
Converse, it is clear to all listening that you didn't say anything close to the Bible as being
Agreed.
anti-slavery.
Agreed,
Will
but
you
that's a
clear-
really bad approach. Like, so you're not one of the debaters. When you like do a super chat like this, remember you're not one of the debaters. You don't get to talk to him and like hold him down and like and hold him to this point and like get into like, okay, but you did never address this, yada yada, etc. It just comes off as you being snarky, even though I agree with it completely. Aron really needed to say something to this effect, probably in his closing, of just like, notice that we didn't really get any engagement from Converse Contender.
Clear that up, please.
And now,
Yeah.
because it's in the form of a Q&A, like, he gets to just, like, grandstand or whatever. Like, he's not going to now address the argument. He's just going to say he did and, like, take issue with debate culture and whatever else.
I'll clear it up. I mean, how many times are you gonna say clear? You know, maybe it's near.
Here's the
maybe it's clear.
grandstanding.
Like, dude, he said that it's clear to everybody. I'm glad you speak for everybody listening. But
Here's the
besides
grandstanding.
that point, like, I mean, look, I get it. A lot of people like Aron, and same thing with Matt, Dillahunty, and others. Like, I've heard people call in and say to them that you're my idol and stuff, right? That doesn't mean that you can't just listen to what I said. Like,
There
I
it is.
literally
Now
went
he's going to
through and
pretend
cited
like he
verses,
actually made the
I cited
argument.
scholars. I gave
But remember, we
references,
went
I think
over it, and we went over it slowly and clearly. He didn't. He didn't make the argument whatsoever. He implied an argument existed. He referenced books that he says the arguments exist in, but he didn't actually say what they were. He listed off a bunch of quotes without analysis at the end, as if they have anything to do with slavery when they didn't, even if we could have read them. And he didn't read them. You know, like, no, he didn't engage. But notice, it's exactly what I said. You know,
said nothing. You haven't even began to read on the topic. Look, I'm not saying I'm right, but I'm saying that, like, if you think I said nothing there, you just haven't started at all yet.
well, no, it's accurate.
This
You
one comes
really
in
didn't
from,
say
I do
anything.
want to say, folks, I'm also fixing the links in the description box. Glad we're catching this while we're live, as someone let me know that the links were broken. So I'm fixing those right now. Appreciate the feedback. Mark Reed in the chat. And this one coming in from Cool Lambo says, if you cannot argue without ad hominems, then your argument has no merit.
So that's not true at all. It's in fact like the fallacy in a way. Like, you engaged in ad hominems, therefore your argument is bad. How does that follow? What if I engage in good argumentation and still ad hominem you? Now, that's not necessarily a good thing, but in certain circumstances, I understand it, at the very least for the position of, well, like, of effectiveness. Vosh does this all the time, and sort of like Destiny and Hunter Avalon, whatever. Like, there's a lot of this, and I do think it makes sense in context sometimes. It's not good argumentation, but that's not what we're trying to accomplish at that moment. That said, I don't think Aron engaged in ad hominem. It's kind of weird. I don't think Converse Contender did either. Maybe like by implication, but usually this criticism is levied at people like Aron and not Converse Contender, because Converse comes off as very like academic.
Fair
Amen.
enough. This one from James W. says, Converse, we would be honored to have you there.
All
as
right, there
well."
we go. Sure.
Let's go. I like Amy, so I don't.
Finally, he
yeah, we've
perks
never
up.
had any issues with
I enjoyed it.
Amy,
All right.
so.
I'm glad he perked up a bit and
Let me just
wasn't
double
just this
check in
like
case there are any last
flat,
questions that I had not gotten to
monotone
ask.
tone voice the whole time. Yeah,
Otherwise,
finally
we
got
might
some.
wrap up slightly early. I
some
was afraid that
inflection.
we were going to go overtime. Let's see.
I was
this
also
one
worried about this. We probably
says-
could have covered this yesterday.
got
But
that
I'm
one.
glad we didn't. Okay. It seems
Well,
like
let
they're
me just
wrapping up
say-
and they might be done with it. And for what it's worth, I have to go fairly soon, so we're gonna cut it there. I am actually glad we went over it a little bit, the Q&A, and I'm glad we left this for today because I don't have much time. I'm sorry for any audio issues. I hope they cleared up by the end there. I expect not, because Scully hasn't said anything in the chat. But from what I can tell, the audio was fine. Hopefully in the VOD you can hear me. So there's that. But I do have plans. I do have a plan for y'all, and it might take more than one day, and I'm okay with that. I was like interacting with someone, and one of the things that came up was people taking issue with this book, a book that, as I understand it, has been banned in like like a lot of school districts as being inappropriate for kids, and it was cited kind of like as this bugaboo about like LGBT indoctrination, and it's not for kids and yada yada etc. That said, I gave a glance through it. It doesn't actually seem that bad, or at the very least, not as bad as people were implying it was. So, what I want to do, in part because I am somewhat interested in talking to this person more about what was going on with this, is I want to read it. So this book called Genderqueer. This book is a memoir. It's banned in like 56 school districts, most of any book according to Penn. Okay, sure. Right. Allegedly really really bad. And I've just heard it had like like R-rated stuff, and it's definitely inappropriate for kids no matter what you think about the gender stuff. And I glanced through it. I disagree a little bit. But maybe I'm wrong because I only glanced through it. What if we read it? So that's what I want to do going forward. I don't know if we'll read all 3 parts. We'll start with part 1. I'll have more of a content warning for the things I have seen when we start reading it. In fact, I'll set a reminder to myself. And we'll go over it, and we'll see what we think. The main question that I want to ask as we go through it is this appropriate for children? By children, what do we mean? Because obviously, not all children are the same, right? There's a difference between what is appropriate for, say, a 10-year-old as opposed to a 15-year-old, even though we might still say they're children. Or a 5-year-old versus a 15-year-old. It's very different, and we're going to try to evaluate that, and we're going to try to be honest about it, because maybe I'm wrong. There was some stuff that made me a little uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean it's inappropriate necessarily. Things can be uncomfortable but still reasonable, and we'll get to that as we get to it. So that's the plan. I hope that's exciting for y'all. It is a bit for me. I know you can't really see. Maybe I'll move my camera when we get to it, because I know you can't really see the edge here. Yeah, I can't really see the edge here, but we'll fix that when we get to it. So that's my plan for tomorrow, maybe Thursday, maybe we'll see how long it goes. I also might start a little bit later tomorrow. I'll still put up the like, oh, we're starting soon thing, so you'll get an idea. And remember, as I'll be saying all this week, next week we're gonna start on Kick. We're gonna move over there, and we're gonna see how it goes there. I'll still be trying to upload my VODs to YouTube, so I won't be like vanishing from this platform. But that's the plan. So thanks so much for watching. Very much appreciate it. I gotta go take care of that stuff I told you I had plans for. But thanks so much for watching. Much appreciated. I hope you have a great day, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.